Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Now let us solve some problems, questions related to the concept of solid, liquid and gases. Okay, now let us recap what we had studied so far about the states of matter. We understand that there are three states of matter: solid, liquid and gases. What are solids? Solid has got definite volume, definite shape and mass. It is also not compressible, does not flow, it is rigid. Whereas in case of liquid, it takes the shape of the container. Liquids also have definite volume and definite mass. But when it comes to compressibility, it is slightly compressible. It flows. It is not rigid as solid. And so liquids also diffuse. That means intermixing is possible in case of liquids. Whereas in case of gases, gases do not have any shape, no volume, but definite mass is definitely there in case of gases. Due to this, gases are compressible, they flow. You would find that gases can not have any rigid shape and they are highly diffusive. Okay, so diffusion, the rate of diffusion is very, very high in case of gases. Now what happens, taking all these things into account, and we had also tried to explain why solid, liquid and gases behaves in this manner on the basis of the characteristics of matter. Now let us solve few problems regarding this. The mass per unit volume of a substance is called density. So we know what is the definition of density, that is mass per unit volume. Now arrange the following in order of increasing density. So taking density as in accordance, let us arrange the following things that are given to us in their increasing density: air, exhaust from chimneys, honey, water, chalk, cotton and iron. So when we are arranging them, we need to keep in mind that the mass per volume, that is the density, what would be the density of each of these substances. So if I try to arrange them according to the increasing density, we find that air is the first one. The second comes with exhaust from chimneys. The third would be that of cotton. The fourth would be water. Fifth is honey. Sixth would be chalk, whereas iron is the most dense amongst them, and that would be the last. So if I have to actually increase, then we find that air is less dense than exhaust from chimney, then cotton, which is less dense than water, then water is less than honey. After that we find chalk, which is less dense than iron. So amongst them, the most dense substance is iron, whereas the least dense substance is air. Alright, next we go to the next question. Tabulate the differences in the characteristics of states of matter. Comment upon the following. So tabulate the differences of the characteristics of states of matter. So you are going to write in the tabular form different states of matter what we had already discussed. And let us see how the states of matter influences the rigidity, compressibility, fluidity, so on and so forth. Now in case of rigidity, solid will be rigid, whereas liquid is less rigid and gases are not rigid at all. Compressibility, solids are not compressible, liquids are slightly compressible, whereas gases are highly compressible. Fluidity, solids you cannot flow. Why it cannot flow? Because the particles are very, very close to one another. So they cannot move from their place. Whereas in case of liquid, it can flow and gases as well can flow. And due to which we see the diffusion is also possible in liquids and gases. Next comes filling a gas container, which will fill. Definitely solid will not be able to fill at all. Liquids will fill the list, whereas a gas container can be filled with the help of a gas. What about the shape? In case of solid, the shape is definite. Liquids takes the shape of the container. Gases, no definite shape. Kinetic energy. Solid has less kinetic energy. Why is it? Because the particles are not moving the energy possessed by the particles due to its motion is very, very less. So, the kinetic energy in case of solid will be very less. In case of liquid, the kinetic energy will be slightly more than that of solid because space is there, particles are able to move, and thus kinetic energy is present. But in case of gases, the kinetic energy will be the highest. Why? Because the availability of space is the maximum, they are at continuous and random motion, and thus their kinetic energy is also very high. Now, what would you say about the density? Density of solid will be more. Why? Because the particles are very, very close. So, the number of particles per volume will be maximum. Liquid, intermediate, and the density of the gases is very, very less. So, I hope with this concept you will be able to answer this question. Next question, give reasons. A gas fills completely the vessel in which it is kept. Now, tell me the answer. What should it be? Yes, you are absolutely right. A gas fills completely the vessel in which it is kept because the particles of gases are spaced up, they are in high motion, and thus because the rate of diffusion is high, they are at continuous motion, so they quickly occupy the space. Number B, a gas exerts pressure on the walls of the container. Why? Because the particles are continuously moving, so they keep on striking the walls of the container, and thus they exert pressure on the walls of the container. Number C, a wooden table should be called a solid. Why not? Because it has got definite shape, it is rigid, it does not change its shape at all, it does not flow, you cannot compress it, it has got a definite mass, and it occupies certain space. D, we can easily move our hand in air, but to do the same through a solid block of wood, we need a karate expert. Of course, if you try to move your hand through a wooden block, it is not possible. Why? Because the particles are so closely packed to one another that they will not allow your hand to pass on easily, and you will definitely end up hurting yourself. But when it comes to air, air is gas and it is a mixture of gases, so the particles are spaced up. There is a lot of space between them. So when you are moving your hand through it, it can move freely because your hand is not being obstructed by the particles at all. Whereas in case of solid, what happens? The moment you try, the particles blocks the entry of your hand, and thus only a karate expert can try his or her hand through a block of wood. I hope with this concept you will be able to answer. Give 2 reasons to justify if water at room temperature is a liquid. Why is water at room temperature liquid? Definitely you understand why is it. Because at room temperature, the particles of the water, that is the water particles, they have enough space between them, due to which they can execute random motion. And because they have random motion, so their kinetic energy is higher than in case of solid. That is the reason why water at room temperature is liquid. Okay. Next is, why is an iron almirah a solid at room temperature? Why is it? Because at room temperature, almirah has particles which are very, very close to one another, due to which there is no random motion and the kinetic energy is very, very less. So, as the kinetic energy is less, force of attraction is highest, space availability is very less, so there is no movement. That's why an iron almirah is solid at room temperature. Clear? Thank you.